Y'all good? Tyrone, what's up, man? Jay Basis, what's up, man? What's that? Skarabi, what's up? What's your question, Jay? Andrew, what's up, man? Brandon, what's going on? Cool. I know I done missed like all kind of comments. Let's see here. We go back before I get too far behind. I'll be stuck on here for 2 hours again. All right, so Netherlands, I see you. Let me go back up. All right, so we'll start with Jay. I just listened to the Gospel Jam track you posted recently. I'm enjoying it so much, bro. Nevertheless, the progression is 1 5 6 4, but between those, I hear you putting a little icing on the cake. What was the pentatonic scale, or triads, or modes, or what could be used most preferable? Yeah, so in those, I'm glad you mentioned something about this. So in those backing tracks, let me listen to what I did. I don't know why my nose is trying to run this morning. All right, so let me check out what I did there just a second. Give me a minute to pull that track up, and I'll address that. And what I always try to do in those particular things is I try to give you guys some ideas of some stuff that you can play. I normally try to start it out pretty simple and then go into something, you know, a little bit more busy, so to give you guys some ideas. All right, let me make sure I'm on the right song. So you said the Gospel Jam track. Let me look up and see which one that is. All right, Gospel Jam track. I think it's the live gospel field. Yeah, I think that's the one you're referring to.
Have you ever struggled with writing a speech or a
Give me a second. Get past the ad. All right, so that ain't the one. Let's see. Let me find it. I clicked on the wrong one, so let's find the right. I want to be able to address that. So let me find the right track. So this is both praise and worship. So I think you're referring to the praise and worship backing track that I just put up. All right, so let me look at the progression that you said it was. 1 5. Yeah, this is the one. And not to give it all the way away, I will do a lesson on that this this coming week. So generally when I drop a track, just a rule of thumb, who is that, Jay? I think that mentioned that. Just a rule of thumb, when I drop a track, I give you guys like the week to play around with it. But then I also will release a lesson, generally trying to explain a little bit more of this. So I'm not going to get too in depth on explaining it. But yeah, the stuff that you hear me doing is I'm kind of navigating around the track, leading into certain things to kind of show you where you can go with it. Just lead in stuff. If you check out my lesson from last week, the lesson that I did, what was the name of the lesson? Filling in the spaces, gospel based. If you check out that lesson, it'll give you a lot of ideas as to some of the stuff that I was applying for this particular track. So let's see here. Yeah, I just caught the line with that particular thing. But I mean, to be honest, that particular track that you're referring to is pretty straightforward. I didn't really do anything other than leading in. Just leading into certain things. So from that 6, 7, 1, 3, 4. And I talked about that a few lessons ago in terms of leading in. So I think you'll find the answer in a couple of videos. So I won't waste the time on this particular live talking about that because I've kind of covered that in the last 2 videos. Matter of fact, I give you specific videos you can go and watch to kind of find out that. So the video that I did, filling in the spaces, gospel bass, and the other one is keeping up with the gospel bass players. Those two, my last 2 lessons that's in the playlist of the Jermaine Morgan TV season 4 bass lessons. You'll find those 2 lessons. Those are the 2 most recent lessons, and I think you'll find like some of the answers you're looking for in those specific videos. So check those out. That way I don't spend this live trying to cover that stuff that I'll cover in the lessons. All right, so let me see here. All right. Thomas Bass, good afternoon. It's afternoon over there, all right, from the Netherlands. What's up, Jermaine, man? All is well, Thomas. I'm good. Appreciate that, Tyrone. Rodney Mosley, what's good, man? I appreciate that. Brandon Barnes is your Jermaine. Where's your 5-string Warrior bass? I haven't seen in a while. Cape Town. Yeah, my 5-string, I actually played it on the last couple of lessons. But it's, for the sake of asking, it's right here. I still have it. Yeah, so yeah, I played it on the video that I was speaking of, keeping up with the gospel bass players. I was playing that bass on that particular video. So she's still around. Let's go back here. Cape Town, South Africa, man. That's awesome. Yeah, Tyrone, I caught a groove there for a moment, man. I was there. Robel, I see you, man. New Guinea, Jeremiah, what's up, man? Praise and worship, got you, man. Yeah, so yeah, Jay, I hope you find what you're looking for in those 2 lessons. Yeah, because I think a lot of what you're talking about, I think I've covered that. So you can probably get a little more in detail there, rather than me, spending time and just going back over the same stuff and boring y'all with with the same stuff over and over again. So let's see here. All right, bass players. Albert Jason says bass players like Davey 504 Carell. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but okay. What's up, man, Albert? Chris Halls, good morning. I'm a new player learning by ear, trying to find my own style. Should I be learning each bass line for each song or just making my own groove? Thanks. So, Chris, I did a really important talk the other day. I did a video. I'm glad y'all asking these questions because I did videos to address just that specific thing. I did something called Just Be You. I released like 3 days ago a video, and it talks about that kind of stuff with developing your own sound. But one of the things, and you'll notice in the comments, one of the people talked about similar to what you're speaking about, how they've been playing just for a little while, and they've really just been kind of learning their way around the instrument. It's hard to begin to develop your own sound right away because you kind of have to learn the instrument first. And so you might not be able right out of the gate to start developing your own style. I mean, naturally you're gonna have your own style. That's a given. Most people don't realize that, but naturally you have your own sound, your own style. It's just you. It is what it is. But now as you grow as a player, you begin to develop that style. You begin to develop what that sounds like and begin to shape it to what you want it to be. But naturally, when you start off, you're gonna sound like you. It's just we get to sound like other people the more we get into it and the more we start experimenting and we start practicing. Because if I go back to the first thing I learned on guitar, I sounded like me playing it. I sounded like me trying to figure out the guitar. I didn't sound like anybody else. So when you start out, a lot of people try to find their own sound, but the reality of it is when you start out, once you figure out how to play, you pretty much have your own sound. You just haven't developed that sound into something that you're happy with. So most of the time we start trying to sound like other people because we don't like how we sound. And it's part of the development. You start out with your own sound because that's your fingerprint. That's what you have. And the more you learn from me, the more you learn from all these other people, from, listening to Marcus, Victor, whoever Larry Graham, Lewis Johnson, whoever you're listening to, you begin to pick up attributes from their playing and all that kind of stuff. But what you do, you take all these things and you add it. You add it. It's almost like, cooking food or, making chicken or something like that. When you season food, that doesn't change what the food is. It just adds a little bit more flavor to what the food is because it by itself could be a little bland. So that's why we pull from all these other different areas. We grab a little oregano, we grab a little paprika, you know what I'm saying? We grab a little pepper, we grab a little salt and add all these different elements to what we have, but never what you don't want to do, you don't want to over season. And you know what I'm saying? Like you have a nice steak or something like that. The steak has its own flavor already. But sometimes that flavor can be a little bland and it needs a little oomph to it. So when you start playing, you just like that steak. You're raw. So nobody really wants it then when it's raw. So you have to begin to prepare it. You have to begin to cook it. You have to begin to add the season, or some of y'all like to marinate or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? But as you're adding those things, one thing you never want to do, you never want to over season. So that means don't add too much Jamerson. Don't add too much Jocko. Don't add too much Jermaine. You want to add just enough. And in doing that, in listening and pulling and getting all this information, you add just enough of these things from these different players that you're listening to just to season you, just to season what you are, just to season that piece of meat you're trying to prepare, which is your own sound. So in finding your own sound, that doesn't mean we have to stray completely away from listening to other people. As I talked about, as you watch the video, Just Be You, creating your own sound. In that particular video, I'm just talking about 98% of the music that we play is other people's music. So when we're playing other people's music, oftentimes you can get lost because you're always learning somebody else's bass line. But the thing about it is, it's good. It's not a bad thing that you're learning to play other people's music. And the more you learn verbatim how that music goes, it's adding to your vocabulary. It's seasoning your meat, so to speak. It's bad analogy, I know, but that's the best thing I can come up with on short notice. But it's seasoning what you know. So the more you're able to add, each song that you learn is adding another element to your playing. And the more you dig and the more you study, you're just adding more and more seasoning to what it is you're trying to create for yourself. Not to become a copycat, because we know when you add too much season, when you put too much salt on anything, that thing starts to taste like salt. It don't taste like what it was that you were trying to season. So that means whatever you add to it, if you add too much, you'll start sounding just like a copy of Victor Wooten. You'll start sounding like a copy of Jamerson, all these different people. So you just have to add just enough of it to add to your own sound. So hopefully that's giving a little more clarity in that particular scenario. All right, so I lost my place. All right. Albert Jason said, I would like to learn some bass licks. Man, I got a whole slew of videos. Slew, that's a good word. Slew of videos here on YouTube talking about bass licks, and not only that, if that's not enough, I have several courses called Riffs and Licks courses that will teach you bass licks, give you PDFs, the score, all of that kind of stuff, the tab, so that you can learn as much as you want until your soul is satisfied. So definitely some licks and stuff available there. You're from the Philippines, man. Glad to have you here, Albert. I'm glad that you're here watching me from the Philippines today. Sil Key says, if I'm saying that right, hey Jermaine, holla from Nigeria. Please, how do I stay fresh? How do I stay fresh with my go-to licks? How do you stay fresh with them? Finding more than one variation to play it. That would be my opinion to you. So we all have certain things that we do as bass players. When you say go-to licks, that means you're like, a lot of people, you're like, if you were to play that, you could take those same group of notes. You don't have to learn another lick, you just rearrange those notes. Same group of notes, I just played it different. I just changed the timing of it and changed my starting point. Or I can go. So that's three different ways that I've took one lick and pretty much my go-to lick. I'm calling that. That's not my go-to lick, but you know what I'm saying? That's three different licks that I've created just by rearranging the notes. And I didn't have to come up with something. I didn't have to do all of that. I just took something that's common to me that I play all the time, and you could do that with any note, anything that you play, something that's really, really common to you. Take that and begin to find other ways of navigating around it. And that's the thing, man. Like, we could have so many different things that we do and have so much more available to us, but a lot of times when you get stuck in one way of doing something that makes you one-dimensional, and you don't realize how many options you have available. You know what I'm saying? You don't realize how many things you can do with just that one tool, with just that one resource. We're always looking for the next thing, looking for the next thing, looking for the next thing. And then you run into these players who seem like they can play, miles around you. But when you sit down with them, you find out that they don't know as much as you know. You actually know more information than they know in terms of theory and all of these different things and all these different licks. But what they've worked on more than information is application. They've learned how to apply the little bit that they know, and they've learned how to apply this in multiple scenarios. Okay, if I'm in this type of song, I can use, like, you know what I'm saying? So they're taking one thing and figuring out how to use it in multiple scenarios, whereas you hear the lick or learn the lick in one scenario, and that's the only time you use it, or you only use it in one position. Like when I go to the 6, I'm gonna do this lick, instead of figuring out, okay, how can I do this over the 2? How can I do this over the 3? Does it even work over the 3? If I'm playing a 5, or if I'm in a dominant, if I'm in a major, how can I take this lick and alter it so it works in a major? So if I'm doing it in a dominant setting now, so now I made that lick major just by altering one note. So instead of playing that, I made it major just by changing one thing. Okay, I'm getting way out there, but y'all get the point. You get the point. So just by altering one thing, it can help you to add to your go-to licks, so to speak. And it's just making little small subtle alterations and just saying, okay, how can I fix this, or how can I make this work in this scenario, and looking at other ways you can do that. All right, so good question. So K Oliver, I recognize you. I think you're one of my students. So in the song "Don't Just Play Lead," I've been playing a long time, and I wanted to know what I need to do to be able to play free like you. It's repetition, man. It's repetition, and we have a little rain, so it's been, matter of fact, it's been raining all week, and it's pretty bad out here. So if my connection gets bad, I told y'all I'm in the country, so if my connection gets bad, I apologize for that. But yeah, we are having a good bit of rain right now. So anyway, one of the things that helps you to be able to somewhat be free is repetition. Repetition of being comfortable, like I was just talking about with your go-to stuff. Being really comfortable and confident with your go-to stuff, practicing, going over the stuff that you know. Now, this is something that I heard Adam Nitty talk about in a clinic that I went and hear him. Adam Nitty's a good friend, but I went and heard him at a clinic one time. And one of the things that he said to me that really stood out, well, he said to me, he said it to the group, and it really stood out to me. He was talking about most people work on new things and they practice learning new things, but it's very rare that people perfect the stuff that they know. Like, leave room for the fact that you might make mistakes. So if you were to practice on the stuff that you play, your go-to stuff, if you were to work on perfecting your go-to stuff, the stuff that you know that muscle memory is going to take over, and I'm going to play this 90% of the time when I'm playing live. And most of you watching this, you know what that thing is that you're going to always go to. I know when I go to the 6, I'm going to, most of us always go to like a minor pentatonic when we go to the 6. Just naturally from muscle memory, that's kind of what you think of. We're playing something off of that. I'm just using that for an example. I'm not saying that's what I do. But most people have their go-to things when they go to certain notes. Okay, this is what I'm going to play over this, like. I'm going to do something like that. But if we worked on cleaning whatever that stuff is that we do naturally, and being able to identify, and there's really several parts to this. Number one, being able to identify what it is that we do and start working on cleaning that up. Being able to identify what it is our go-to things are and start cleaning those little things up. Working on the fine detail on how we navigate around those things. And paying attention, recording yourself. I've said this before. Recording yourself in like performances if you have the opportunity. Recording your practice time and listening to certain things you do. Your tendencies, okay, what do I repeat? What do I have the tendency to do over and over again? And being able to say, okay, I need to find another way of getting there. I don't need to, it's almost like having a conversation. You say the same words. I have certain statements that when I listen to myself in the lives, I'm like, I didn't realize I say that. Or when I'm recording videos, often I hear myself say certain things that it's just habit, force of habit, human nature. When we speak, we have certain things we do like unconsciously. We're not aware that we're doing it. And it's the same thing when it comes to your playing. You have certain things in your playing. If you can begin to identify what those things are, identify your little bad habits, and start working on cleaning up those little bad habits, you know what I'm saying? That's the way you begin to clean up what it is you're doing. It comes by hearing over and over again, kind of like what it talks about scripture. How do we get better? Faith comes by hearing over and over, and it comes the same when it comes to your playing. You have to hear what you're doing. You can't just go off of what you're hearing in real time because you'll forget. You have to have some type of way of recording what it is that you're doing so you can go back and be honest with yourself in terms of your performance. All right, I'm doing this a little too much. I'm sliding a little too much. When I make a mistake and I don't know where I'm at in the song, how many of y'all bass players, y'all be playing a song and they get to a part that you don't really know and you'll pull this move right here. You start sliding because you don't know the lick or you don't know where they're going in the song, so you're going to slide your way all the way through it. If you know that that's something for you, that's a tendency for you, when you get lost, you need to work on that. You need to figure out, okay, how do I stop doing this? I need to realize, okay, this is a problem that I have. I'm doing this way too much. I'm doing way too much. This song does not have that much sliding in it, so I shouldn't be sliding that much. Don't use your slide as a scapegoat, bass players. I know all about it all too well. Come to lick. You can't slide your way out of every lick. So you need to learn and figure out what it is you're making the mistakes on. Start figuring it out. Start sitting down with it. Don't give yourself excuses. And so that kind of thing, it helps you to be able to play more freely and be more comfortable and more confident. And the last thing I'll share on that particular note is you want to be able to, and I told one of my students this, I don't know if he's on here today, but you want to be able to put the fire under yourself. You want to be able to put yourself in a position. I talked about this actually a few weeks ago on one of the lives. You want to put yourself in a position that makes you uncomfortable. The more you're uncomfortable, the better you'll start to play. The more you get comfortable with the idea of not having, that's my brother on here this morning. What's up, dude? Yes, sir. So that's you once you get comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, now you can start to perform at a higher level. Each time you play, you get better and better, because what you're doing ultimately is you're facing the fears of what's going on in your playing. Like, you starting to pick out, okay, I'm making this mistake. And all of us know we have those times that we're sitting at home when nobody's watching, no camera on, nobody's there. You sound like Victor Wooten at your own house. It's kind of like the syndrome of singing in the shower. You sound like Michael Jackson in the shower, but you get out, you sound like somebody else. It's like, man, what in the world happened? It's the anxiety, and I'm exaggerating, of course, but a lot of times what's stopping you from playing at your highest level is anxiety, worry, basically same thing, fear. You got that fear of failure. You have that fear of messing up. So you'll begin to, perform out of that anxiety instead of really digging in and doing your best by ignoring. Like, I'm going to be honest, when I was playing at the beginning of the video, I kind of forgot y'all was here. I was enjoying the groove so much. I was like, oh man, I got to get back and I got to start talking, to the people that's on here before people start checking out. But you want to be able to be in that place, not where you completely tune the audience out, but in a sense you want to tune them out, but learn the art of, all right, I'm having so much fun, you have no choice but to go with me. Like, you almost get to where you go in your own world. I know you're there, but I'm not going to let you become a distraction to me. And I think that begins to raise the level of your performance level, what you're executing, you're being comfortable, you're being clean, all that kind of stuff. It begins to raise because you're not allowing the audience to become a distraction to you. Yes, I'm playing something and you're listening to it, and I want you to be affected positively by what I'm doing, but I'm not going to allow you to affect my performance in a way of, like, looking at people's facial expressions, even getting hyped up on good feedback, because good feedback can hype you up and put you up on a pedestal where you fall off. Because now there's so much anticipation for you to do something else good that you start to mess up. You play something really good and people are like, woo, and then the next thing behind it, you mess up because you got caught up in their comment instead of focusing on what it is you were doing, or being, not necessarily focusing, but being in the moment and actually enjoying what it is you're doing and being completely into either worshiping or playing the music, all this different stuff. You got caught up in their comments. You got caught up in feeding into the hype. You can't feed into the hype because it'll cause you to fall when you're playing. All right. So I'm way behind. I'm way behind on my comments. I'm trying to catch up, y'all. I promise I'm trying to catch up. All right. So, all right. Man, I'm way behind. So, K. Oliver, I hope my bass mentor also showed me your bass lesson. I'm glad, man, that you're here again, AJ. Good morning, Bruce. What's going on? Afternoon, Russell. I will learn this. What's that? I will learn the same 7 courses and tabs. Cool. Hi, I'm from Brazil. I really like your work. I learn a lot from videos. Man, thank you. Bass gospel. I like to listen to classic bass players like Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, and so on. For gospel grooves, I learn grooves from Abraham Laboriel and Victor Wooten. So yeah, so depending on what era of gospel you're talking about, make sure you kind of get the perspective of people who are actually playing in the genre. Abe Laboriel and Victor Wooten are both phenomenal bass players, hands down. I got nothing but respect for them. But there are a lot of gospel bass players you may not know about who are playing on a lot of the gospel records, who are constantly playing in that context. Victor Wooten, as much of a phenomenal solo bass player as he is, he's just as much a grooving bass player. But I know Victor Wooten doesn't always play in the context of gospel. He has played on gospel records. But being able to hear somebody who is constantly in that particular world consistently, it gives you something else. It gives you a different level of understanding when you understand it from a perspective of a player who's not necessarily, hitting it every now and again, but somebody who's like immersed in that. Cats like Maurice Fitzgerald, Daryl Freeman, Justin Raines, just to name a few, Reggie Young, going back and listening to like old James Hall. Man, there's so many. Terrence Palmer with Israel Houghton back in the day. So many pioneer bass players that Andrew Goucher, I can't say that without mentioning Andrew Goucher, Joel Smith. It's so many other players who have contributed so much to that particular genre. So you will get a lot more being able to listen to those players who actually, like I said, have been immersed in that particular genre. And I'll say the same across the board for whatever, and of them both. But in terms of when it comes to playing gospel music, like when I'm learning songs, because that's my primary genre is gospel and Christian music. So when I'm in those worlds playing those different songs, there's probably a 1% chance that I pick up and have to learn a song that Abe Laboriel played or Victor Wooten played when I'm in a gospel setting. So I'm listening to the cats who are constantly playing this music consistently, and I'm pulling from the stuff that they're doing, adding to my vocabulary like we talked about earlier, adding that little seasoning from these cats that are constantly in this genre, and it gives me so much more to add, and I understand a little bit more in context when I'm doing that. All right, so is it scales or creativity? Cause Jeremiah, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier with, yeah, you definitely want to learn scales. Being able to first navigate around the bass and being able to understand where you are, what you're doing. That's one of the main things. But there's a lot of people, I don't want to base it all on scales, excuse me, because there are a lot of people who don't know scales, but they can play licks. I mean, they can play licks and play you up under the table with all kind of fancy stuff, and they have no idea what they're playing. They don't even know. They don't even know what key they're in. I know musicians right now who are phenomenal players. They have no idea what key they're in. You just put a bass or a guitar in their hand and they will play you up under the table. So it's not necessary. I don't want people to think I got to know all this theory, I got to know all this, I got to know what everything is called. That helps to be able to explain it to other people or to be able to know exactly what it is you're playing, but it's not a requirement. That's the facts. It's not a requirement that you have to know everything about all the scales and all, because there are people, I have it's a little understudy of mine. I can't even call him an understudy because the dude is so amazing. But he was a little young kid when I was playing back home at my home church. A little young kid, bass player. He came up. He's older now, but at the time I was playing keyboards at my home church, and he was like 12 years old, and just came out of nowhere playing the bass. But the dude was naturally gifted. He had perfect pitch. He didn't even know he had it until I tested him on it, but he had perfect pitch, and he was just playing stuff that was just mind-blowing, and he had no idea what it was. He didn't know anything about modes. He didn't know anything about scales or any of that stuff. He could just hear it, and he spent so much time practicing and perfecting his gift that he could just play anything he was hearing. And I think the biggest thing, like I was talking about earlier, you have to be able to hear it. You have to be able to have that music in your head by listening and listening and listening, and not just listening for entertainment purposes all the time, but listening with the intent on learning what it is you're hearing. You have to listen with the intent, because I know a lot of you guys listen to a lot of music, but you don't listen with the intent on learning. And when you don't listen with the intent on learning, you'll pick up a little bit of it, but you won't really pick it up. And I don't even mean have your bass out every time. You can be riding down the road in your car. I was telling one of the students in one of the coaching calls the other day, listening while you're driving is a form of practicing if you do it right. If you're driving down the road and you're actually imagining the fretboard, I told him, like, man, you have your seat belt that goes across. You can use that as a fretboard. While you're driving, you're using your seat belt because it comes all the way down. So it's almost equivalent to having a bass like here. So you literally, granted, we know you don't feel the strings, but you have to use your imagination, because if you can begin to imagine, okay, this is where this is on the fretboard. All right, I don't know what key they're in, but let's just imagine they're in the key of C. This is how they will play. So you don't have to have all the specifics down pat, but at least be able to have an idea, okay, this is where they're going, this is what's going on. I'm kind of figuring this out. If you can do that often, if you're driving and your commute to work is an hour one way and an hour back, that means you have roughly 2 hours of practice time, give or take. You know what I'm saying? Or at least a solid hour that you can practice mentally in terms of strengthening what you understand as far as the fretboard. Begin to visualize it, get it in your mind, what it looks like, where stuff is. And when you sit down with the bass, now try to execute the stuff you've been working on. So you already had an hour of practice in the car. So if I can take at least 30 minutes and try to put together what I was hearing in the car, well, I already got an hour and a half of practice. It sounds crazy, but it actually works when you do it the right way and you're intentional about how you practice. So make an excuse about, man, I'm always busy, I don't have time to practice. It really doesn't work. I get what you're saying. You don't have time to physically practice, but if you're serious about it, it's kind of like what our topic is about today. It's like, what will it take? What will it take for you to really do what you have to do? I don't remember what the topic was. I write it down and see if I can find the actual topic. But you guys got where I'm coming from. Let's see here. Let me go back. So, and I'm gonna continue reading. I'm gonna continue reading the comments because I'm trying to get caught up, and y'all still commenting, which is cool. All right. So for jazz fusion, I listen to Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller, and Henrik Linder for progression and metal. Yeah, I mean, you're pretty much covering what I said just a minute ago. Christopher D, what's up? Christoph, man, what's up, dude? That's my brother, LaKendrick Morgan, everybody. That's my Gamble. Got me. He said, you got me with the slide. All I could do was laugh when you did that. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of us we be cheating. I see a lot of people talking about that slide. All right. Gisham says, hi, Jermaine, how to create interesting feels based on modes. Man, I did a whole series. Gisham, I'm gonna have to send you to my when you leave this video, when you leave this live, go to my YouTube channel. I did I think it's in season 3, Jermaine Morgan TV season 3. I did like a whole series on talking about the modes and using the modes, and I did really extensive talking about using the modes and that kind of thing. And even in I want to say in my first few videos using the modes, I want to say I have. So I've done a lot of talking. Just go through my channel. Just binge watch when you get a chance, because I don't want to spend up all the time talking about information that there are actual videos that I've covered. And I went through detailed modes in terms of, Dorian, Ionian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Phrygian, all that kind of stuff. I've talked about it in terms of building feels, and I also talked about it in the sense of using it in regular grooves. I did a study with the modes, using it in quartet grooves, how to add the modes in like gospel feeling stuff. So it's a lot of talking that I've done about the modes. So I won't do it here. Good morning. Chef Neil says, good morning. Do you recommend bass boot camps? Of course. I haven't personally been to one, but any access to information that you can get, if this is something that you really care about, any way that you can get to the information, absolutely. I'm all for it. Because what are you going to lose by investing in your craft? It's, no different from people going to wealth seminars and all these different type of seminars just to increase what they know. So if this boot camp or whatever for bass players is to help you increase in your knowledge and to give you some tips and to learn from pros, absolutely. Yeah, you should definitely go and be a part. Hopefully at some point I'll be invited to some of these things and I can speak and share as well. But yeah, I'll absolutely encourage you guys to go to as much information or grab as much information as you can grab on the subjects that you want to know more about, because where you stopped at, that's where you're going to stop at. I'm constantly searching for information, constantly pushing myself, constantly digging, trying to see how much more I can learn, even studying my own self. Things that I've done well, I go back and study and see, why did I do it well? Why was this album, good? Why was this solo good? What did I do here that I'm not doing now? What can I improve on that I was pushing at this particular time? And it goes back to recording yourself as well. When you're studying yourself, you have to have some record of your progress in order to be able to go back to it and see how you were doing, because you have stints in your practice. I always hear players say stuff like, especially older players, like, man, when I was this age or when I was that age, I was doing this and I was doing that, but we have no record of hearing it. We have no way of hearing what you were doing. So it's just you pretty much telling us what you were doing, but I have no way to prove it. I'm not saying that you didn't do it, but it's better when you can go back and actually find proof of what it is you were doing, or find the record of what it is you were doing. And that helps so much so in terms of moving you forward. All right, so let's see here. Let me see where I'm at. Speak a lick. Joel, man, what's up, dude? So funny story, man. I see you on here this morning. That's why I'm gonna mention it, man. So Joel's wife found out that Joel was a fan of my music probably about 2 years ago, and his wife made arrangements. Well, his soon-to-be wife at the time made arrangements to fly me in for their wedding, to surprise him, which I thought it was super dope for her to do that, to pay attention to what you like that much, to bring in somebody that you actually admire. And I was, one, completely humbled by the opportunity to do that and to share that and to share with y'all special day, man. I ain't even read your comment yet. I just saw your name and it just reminded me of how cool that was, to be invited to be a part of y'all's special event. So yeah, I have done cameo appearances from time to time for birthdays and several things like that. And Joel, yours right now is still at the top for me in terms of a cameo or whatever. But I'm forever grateful for the opportunity to share with you and Tiffany on y'all's special day, man. I know that's been a few years ago, but it was still a cool experience, and I'm really, really grateful to have shared at that experience with y'all. Let's see here, in the DMV. All right, your favorite cut to play off your first album. Man, off my first album, I gotta think. The favorite song to play off of that album. Wow, Groove Man. There you go. Groove Man will probably be my top song. Obviously, I redid it several times and I re-released it on Grooves and Ideas. So Groove Man would probably be the number one for my first album. That would probably be the I don't know. It's just something in it, and the song is not that. When it comes to technicality, it's not that much stuff going on in the song, but it's just I really like the song. I like the groove. It grooves, man. So to answer your question, I think that's probably my favorite song to play off of my first album was Groove Man. I can't pronounce your name, Byrich. I think that's how you say it. Should I use standard tuning? It's preference, man. It's preference. Why would you tune any differently? What would be your reason? That would determine the answer for that question, in my opinion. I use altered tuning, or I tune flat rather, because I play a lot of gospel music and I've grown to like that tuning, because there are a lot of low B flats, a lot of low E flats, and I can reach those notes playing open notes, as opposed to having to play them up an octave and that kind of thing. So I enjoy it for that reason. A lot of people enjoy having the option of the low A, so they tune down a whole step, like Andrew Boucher. I think Daryl Freeman does it as well as some other players that I know. So it depends on what your reason is for it. If you're just doing it to copy another player, I don't think that's a good reason. I think you should have like a legitimate reason for why you do it, and just, but if you just grow to like it after doing it because somebody else did it, that's cool. I mean, if you want to just try something just to be different, that's cool. But my thing would be, make sure you know your way around standard tuning. That would be my only kick with that. If you're gonna tune, if you're gonna tune down, be able to kind of know your way around the fretboard still. If it came to standard tuning, so every week I'm tuning back and forth. Like for my lessons, I tune standard, but for my playing and my own personal preference, because I know a lot of people had complaints about that in my earlier lessons on this channel. I would be tuned flat, and it threw a lot of people off. So I started back tuning. I understood what I was doing, but I knew the majority of people, it threw them off. So that was the reason why I started tuning back standard. But I prefer to play flat tune. So it's preference at the end of the day. I don't think you should be doing one or the other. It's a matter of preference. What works for you? Miss Coco, what kind of bass do you recommend for beginners? There are a number of them out here. This bass, to me, this Jaguar bass, this Squire. Nope, Squire is not paying me to say this. I wish they would, but this is a great bass. This Squire is, don't sleep on Squire. Like, they putting out some really good stuff. I play some good Ibanez basses, but it's just far as this particular bass, for it to be a $200 bass. And if you're getting started, the reason why I say, people might be like, man, why aren't you saying a Warrior bass, or even a Serene bass, or something like the basses you play? Well, when you're getting started, you're still on the fence about whether you're gonna stay with it or not. So you can bass, or a high-end, any kind of high-end bass, Serene bass, to do it, by all means, rock out if you're a collector. But if you're a person like majority of the world, and you are not just rich, and you're looking to get into this thing, I wouldn't break the bank getting started. Now, once you get to a certain level, and like for sure, like even when people that buy basses for kids and buy basses for their kids, like I bought my son a drum set for Christmas, and I probably played it more than he has. And so, but it's a little cheap starter drum set, and I knew not to go out and buy him anything big, because they don't know if they're going to continue with it. Same thing with my daughter. I bought her, I think a keyboard might have cost $100. Thankfully, she plays it, and thankfully, she has an ear for music. But all of them have an ear for music, but you don't know what they're going to continue to do. Even with yourself, you don't know if you're going to continue in this thing. I hope you do. And I have a beginner basis course to help you get started if you're interested in learning to play bass, or you're a beginner. On my website, shameless plug, JermaineMorgan.net, there is a beginner basics course that breaks down all of the fundamentals for stuff you need getting started. But yeah, I recommend something like a simple Squire, or a simple little Ibanez bass, something that's under $300. Just getting started, as long as it feels comfortable with your hands. You're not tearing your hands up trying to play it. It's not too uncomfortable. The strings aren't too high off the neck. You can even check out like pawn shops. Like, they have little basses for like $100, $150. You can find some gems in pawn shops every now and again. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get started. And the brand really isn't that important when you're getting started, because the biggest thing is you just want to get started. You just need something to get started. So it's really totally up to you. Like I said, if you have the money, of course, I recommend a Warrior bass, or recommend even a Serene bass. But if you're just getting started and you don't have a lot of money, go find something that you can afford. Don't get caught up in names. I play these basses. I play custom basses because I like them. But for years when I started, I never played on anything custom. I played on cheap stuff when I got started for years. My first real investment in a bass was a Fender Jazz bass. It was a Mexican Fender Jazz that I had. That was my first introduction to buying what I call a real bass, and I was in college when I done that. So yeah, whatever you can afford, to get started. Don't sleep on the name, because it's not a big name. All right, I'm trying to catch up. Trying to catch up. All right. So, how do you learn a song by ear? Sitting down trying to figure out if you have been learning to play by music, by reading rather. That's great. Depending on the environment that you're in, though, you might not always have the option of sheet music available to you. You might not always have the option of tab and all of this different stuff. You might not even have time for that. So you may have to pick out a quick system of learning, and that comes by listening and trying to apply it when you hear it, trying to navigate and find your way around. It's almost playing by ear, for the simple definition, to me is equivalent to learning how to speak. Nobody gives you a book of the alphabet when you start learning how to speak. So if you can hear words that your parents teach you and repeat those words when you're a child, it's the same process when it comes to learning music and playing by ear. You're hearing it and you try to repeat it. Is it going to sound clear when you start? Absolutely not. My daughter that's 2 right now is still some words. She say a lot of things that's pretty clear, but she goes into the end of the game, I have no clue what she's talking about. So there's some things that I don't understand, but there are words. Since she's been talking and I've been talking more and more to her, I'm the music. I'm talking more and more to her, and the more she listens to me, the more she watch how I articulate words and how her mother and her brother and sister articulate words, the better she forms those words. But she has to do it. It's a repetition of hearing and hearing and hearing and doing, hearing and doing, hearing and doing. Don't just be doers. Don't just be hearers, do it too. You know what I'm saying? The biblical principles, you can apply those to your plan. Don't just hear it, do it. So it's the same thing when it comes to trying to learn how to play by ear. Hearing it, doing it. Hearing it, doing it. Hearing it, doing it. And don't get frustrated and just upset when you're not getting it fast enough. It's a process. It's going to take time to answer your question. Christoph says, always a pleasure to feel what you given us through your positive attitude. Man, thank you. To God be the glory, man. You said, Dave said, I need help. And that's pretty much it, man. So Mike says, Jermaine, how do you go about perfecting your muting techniques, getting both hands to work together at the same time? Man, I don't even know if I done perfected it. But it's just constant. It goes back to my answer that I gave earlier, not to spend too much time on that question, but being aware of the little things that you're doing, recording yourself, paying attention to your tendencies. What is your tendencies? Do you have a tendency to let the strings ring when you play? And I noticed since I got this bass, I have to pay more attention to, and I did, for some reason, I didn't do, I think that it's because this neck is a little bigger than my Warrior 6-string was. But I have a tendency to let the low B string ring when I'm playing in a higher register. So now you see me moving this fret wrap a little bit more, and I use this to help me where I'm lacking it, and until I get to the point where I've perfected it, I use this in the areas that I'm lacking to make up the difference, to make up the slack in terms of strings ringing and that kind of thing. But in terms of my hand, I'm just aware of certain things, how I'm placing my hands, how I'm bending the strings. A lot of the questions I've been getting a lot lately since the recent videos I've been posting. A lot of people have been asking about my vibrato. How do I do my, this, that kind of thing. It's just being aware of what it is I'm playing and knowing what sound I'm going for. Maybe sometimes it's a bend that I want, or if it's more of an aggressive vibrato that I want, I might do, and I don't mind that little buzz. And so for me, like being aware of those little things that I'm doing helps me to get better and better at basically at the question that you're asking. All right, so let me get back. All right, Jeremiah, I really appreciate your reply. Absolutely, man. You said that a while ago, so I know I'm behind. All right, thank you for going to in March. Thank you, going to one in March with Gerald Beasley. Oh, cool, man. Real cool. Gerald Beasley is a legend, man. Can you play a gospel lick? I think I just did. All right, so Mercy Momo Momo. Hey Jermaine, what bass do you recommend for playing country music? Take your pick. I know people play custom basses in country music. People will play. I mean, it's really preference. I don't think any particular bass has to be for a specific genre. Just as long as you know how to get the sound you want out of your bass. You, of course, pay attention to what, I hate to say this, but pay attention to what the people in that genre are playing in terms of like when it comes to those top genres like country music. It has a lot to do with what's preferred by your person that's hiring you. They might not want an exotic bass look on their gig. So it really matters with that when you're playing those type gigs. Most people want the simple Fender jazz bass look. And that if I just had to give you an answer, it would probably say something simple like a Fender Jazz or like a was it like an Ernie Ball or a Lakeland or something that has a very simple design and a very standard sound to it. Even Federa now is making a very standard type bass, which is, there's not standard in price, but they're making more of a standard design. Warrior even has a standard with their Bella 62. So almost every bass company has like a standard traditional, when I say standard, more traditional style bass. When you're playing more traditional styles of music, generally people lean more to the more traditional looking styles of instrument, but it's not a requirement. It really matters what you want to play, and if the artist is cool with what you're playing, if the people you're playing with is cool with it, and it's not affecting your pay, you play whatever you want to play. You play a six-string Serene, and if you're going in there and killing the gig, I don't think anybody has any complaints. Just my opinion. There are preferred sounds by people who have really, really sensitive and specific ears, and they want certain things, but it's on you, and it's about what you're willing to do. So yeah, that's my take on it. So you don't have to get caught up in, man, I gotta have a Fender. I don't own a Fender. I used to, but the Squire Jaguar is the closest thing I have to a Fender. And I don't, to me, for the stuff I do, I don't get called to this point. I've been in sessions. Let me rephrase it. I have been in music sessions where people preferred that Fender sound. But when I'm remote recording and they don't know what I'm using, I know how to get the tone I need to get for the song. And so when I'm recording at my house and that bass track comes across their desk and they listen to it in them headphones, they don't care what it is. They like the track, and it's like, yo, that, I don't know what you use. Thank you. Each bass has its own personality, its own identity. So it really matters how you know how to navigate your instrument, how to get whatever you need to get out of the instrument, and picking what works best. Now, I will be more specific in saying a boutique bass has a very particular sound. And if you don't know how to navigate and get certain sounds, it's like a bass like this, you're gonna pretty much kind of be able to tell what it is when you're hearing it. It don't matter with the EQ. You can EQ it pretty good, but for the most part, people are gonna be able to tell, okay, that's not a Fender by the sound. If you've been playing for a while and you've been listening to the sound of basses, even with EQing it, there's going to be certain things that stick out to let you know. Like when you play a Ken Smith bass, there are very specific things that stick out when you hear that bass that when hearing that record, okay, that's a Ken Smith on that record. Like when it's like comes to the regular standard Ken Smiths that look a little bit like this, you're going to know what those basses are just because of the design of the basses and the type of woods that are used in making the bass. All that makes a difference. But if you have different wood types, you can kind of get away with different sounds, and that's a conversation for a whole nother day. I won't spend no more time, no more time on that. All right, so pawn shop, LOL, but it's doing just fine. Come on here, I got plenty of bases I bought from pawn shop, gave them away, most of them. All right, so the beginner's course has been helpful, man. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that you took the beginner's course and it was helpful for you. How often should you change your strings? That's depending on what you like. For a long time, I wasn't changing that often because I didn't like so much brightness But over the years, my ear has changed. So what I used to like, sometimes I'm not as cool with. I'm looking for a little, like, as my ears adjust and as I go on more and more in my playing, I change my strings a little more often now. With the way I rotate basses, for me, it's probably about once every 2 months or so that I change strings. But if you have one primary bass, it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking to keep that clarity and that brightness in your string, you do a lot of slapping, a lot of thumping, that kind of thing. You probably want to keep them changed. If depending on how often, it also has a lot to do how often you play. If you're playing a lot, you probably got to change your strings more often, like, at least once a month. For a person that plays a lot, you have sweaty hands. Tell you a little trick that a lot of my older cats gonna know about this, but a lot of my young cats don't know about this. If you're tight on the budget, you can't afford those strings. You don't have an endorsement deal or anything like that, and strings can get expensive from time to time. But I think now strings are way more affordable than they used to be with bass strings. It used to be like, $40, $50 a pack. But now you can get a decent set of strings for like, man, 20, $30. But so you can kind of get away with that. If you're going to invest in your instrument, I think you can buy strings, buying a 25 to 30, even if you pay $35 for a set of strings once a month, that's not too much to invest into your craft. This is what you do. So invest into it. You know what I'm saying? So if you're able to do that once a month, but if you're not able to do that, you can boil them, guys. You can take you a pot, pull your strings off, take you a little pot of boiling water. A lot of people talk against this, but hey, I've been there. I ain't always had a string endorsement, so there were times I had to boil my strings. Even after getting an endorsement, I would boil them, guys. I got no shame in it. I would boil them. I would put a pot of water on, put the strings in there, add just a little pinch of alcohol. I'm giving y'all some old poor man secrets from back in the day. I would add just a little pinch of alcohol in there and boil them for about 10 to 15 minutes. Pull them out, dry them off, wrap them back up, let them sit there for a while, put them back on the bass, and you can get a good 2 more weeks of playing out of them. If you just need to extend it, you're in a tight, you can't buy strings right away, you can get a little bit more playing out of them. They're not going to last as long, but you can get, at least if you're playing consistently, you can get probably a good 2 more weeks out of them. But don't keep boiling those strings, though. That's not a good thing. Don't keep doing that. But that is just a little poor man thing. If you're in a tight, you need to do it. Boil those strings. All right. So let's see here. All right. So I'm back to Joel. Just catching up. Yeah, man. My wife still gets brownie points for flying you out to play at the wedding. And yeah, it was 2014. We married, Doc. Yeah, y'all married, man. 2 kids, 3 bases later. Wow, that was 2014. It was that long ago, man. Time has been flying. It's 26 years ago. Wow. That's crazy, man. Time flies. That's awesome, man. And congratulations on the 2 kids and the 3 bases. Yes, sir. All right, so Laverne, great work here, sir. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Do you recommend a fretless? Sure, why not? I recommend any bass. If you got the money to get it and you can get it and add it to your arsenal, listen. When I get in a position, this whole wall gonna probably be full of basses. Just cause I want them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, what musician don't want more equipment, more gear? So yeah, I recommend fretless. Why not? I don't have a fretless. I haven't got one. I put it like this. I haven't been in a position or been recommended on any records to record fretless. And that's a bad thing that I haven't already got one, but I haven't made it a priority to get a fretless bass. I do like the sound of fretless bass. I've played them before in music stores and so on, and I really, really like the sound of a fretless bass. But it all comes back down to preference. If you're never going to play a fretless bass, and you're not going to be in a genre that ever requires that, and you don't see yourself ever doing it, I mean, there's no push for you to get a fretless bass. But if you want one, that's up to you. So all right. Michael says, what are some of the strong bass concepts that really has made you play great? That's a strong. Being able to learn from the people who do it well. Being able to pull little things from the people who are like I consider to be the better bass players or at the top, or little subtle things that I'm trying to find the best way to answer your question. All right, I know exactly how I want to answer your question. Let me read it again to make sure I'm understanding your question correctly. He said, "What are some of the strong bass concept that's really helped, that's really made you play great?" All right, I know the perfect answer for your question, Michael. Paying attention to detail. Paying attention to detail. Paying attention to the in between stuff that everybody else forgets about. That's probably had the greatest impact on my playing. Not playing 100 licks, 1,000 miles per hour, not being able to solo, not all this other stuff, not any tricks, but paying attention to detail. Detail as in how I'm navigating through songs, the stuff that I'm sharing with you each week, the detail stuff. The stuff that I'm teaching you is the detail stuff. Being aware of what I'm doing, the detail. That's made the greatest impact on my playing. Is paying attention to detail. All right. So what else we have here? Jerry Lessa says, "Do you like Fender Jazz?" Of course, it's cool. Fender's cool. Is it my preferred bass? No, but I like it. I like hearing other people play it. I probably wouldn't be. It probably wouldn't be my first thing to pick up, but I do like it. I know that's like oxymoron, so to speak, but yeah. DeAndre says, "How to EQ on different songs for the best sounds, bro?" It depends on the song, and a lot of times I base that off when you're getting started. You kind of have to have a reference point, like reference the records that you listen to, and kind of base that off of what you hear these people doing in these albums and that kind of thing. Like being able to pick out what they're doing. Okay, his bass sounds like that. How do I get that sound? And trying to mimic that sound with your bass. And then when you get to the next song, and what you notice after a while, and when you get in certain patterns, after a while, certain patterns will begin to stick out to you. Like, okay, in this particular song, that's how this person plays, or that's how these group of bass players seem like they play in these particular songs on this particular sounding groove. That's how they play. Like a higher ground. There's a certain, what I'm saying? It's like a certain sound that you get accustomed to hearing. Like Marcus Miller did that with Higher Ground way back in the day. So I've heard a lot of gospel songs that have that higher ground-ish type feel. Not necessarily higher ground, not that groove, but it's that same, like Fred Hammond did it with Let the Praise Begin. You know what I'm saying? And like being able to hear, okay, he took that same concept for like Let the Praise Begin, that really Marcus Miller thing. After Let the Praise Begin, there were tons of other stuff like the Marvin Sapp Possess the Land. The same, it's not as aggressive, but it's the same concept. So what you start to know, my point I'm making with this, you start to notice patterns with styles of music. Okay, when people are playing this style of music, this is more so the tone that they have, and you try to mimic that EQ as much as possible. And of course, okay, these are the patterns. When I play records, I play what the record needs, but I add my own, interpretation of what that is. When people are hiring me to play on a song, they're hiring me for what I do. I do have people that hire me just because they need a bass player, but at this point in my career, most of the people that call me, they call me for what I do. But I always do that with respect to the song and understanding the context. Okay, this is that type of groove. So like I reference a lot when I talk about something that's more soulful, that has it's not too bright, not too over the top. I'm moving, and the concept, the reference point rather that I'm using is like an old James Jamerson. I understand concept because I went back and studied like those old 70s records. And let me make sure I make this clear, because most people are like, man, I didn't even know to go study it. The only reason I went back and started studying styles so much, because there was a point when as a songwriter and producer, when I started getting into producing music for film, I had to make stuff that was genre specific and era specific. So that means if I was making a song that sounds like a 70s song, it had to sound like it was recorded in that era. So it made me have to go back and study that era of music. Now that's the only reason. I don't want to give y'all this idea like I'm such a great bass player that I went back and studied all the greats because I knew it was my rightful thing to do. No, I didn't do it for that reason. I knew that I had to learn these different eras of music because that's what I was trying to do in terms of getting into film and submitting music for film. My music had to sound like it was authentic to the era. So I would listen to these different eras and listen to the sound of their basses and the different styles of music, what each person was doing, and that helped me to understand in context how this stuff worked and how to put it together. And so the same thing, we do it in church all the time. When we play for church musicians or when we play for different bands and stuff, we listen to all this music and we are listening to it in context, and we try to mimic it. We try to mimic that sound. So to answer your question all the way around the world, but to answer your question, you listen in context and try to mimic that as much as you can. Of course, adding your own personality to it, but try to give respect to the music as you're EQing for each song. And the biggest thing to do, especially when you're in a live setting, is try to have a happy medium. You don't have as much wiggle room when you're playing live as you do when you're studio recording. So give yourself wiggle room, which means find a happy medium in your tone settings that you don't have to do as much adjusting in a live setting. Find like a good happy place and stay there. Don't keep adjusting, because if you're in a bigger setting, sound men don't like that. If they have to keep adjusting you from song to song, find a happy place that works for all the songs. And maybe on this song, you might have to roll off on your highs just a little bit. Or I might have to boost my mids because I'm playing a little more finger tone on this song. So find a happy place to where you have to make minimal adjustments in the song. Your whole EQ on your bass shouldn't change from one song to the next. You can change it a little bit, but it shouldn't change dramatically like you picked up a completely different bass, unless that song requires for your bass to sound like, if you're playing a song like you know, what I'm saying? You're playing really aggressive, but the next song is a I didn't change my EQ, I just changed the way I played. Now if I start, you learn how to control your tone with your hands, not necessarily turning the knobs and turning the dial. Find a happy place, let it sit there. Don't keep adjusting. You know what I'm saying? Find a happy place and adjust with your hands. What you need to be doing in your right hand is really controlling that tone with your right hand placement, whether it's here or all the way back here. I just got 3 different tones and I never touch my knobs. So learn how to kind of adjust your tone with your hand. Instead of always, like, again, just for the sake of consistency, me making sure that you know, find a good place where you're satisfied with the tone that you're getting, but don't spend the whole show constantly adjusting your tone, especially if it's being recorded, because you go back and listen to your instrument, 9 times out of 10, if you've been adjusting your tone the whole show, your ears will trick you in a live setting. So you want to find something that you're sweet with and stick with it, because you listen to it at the end of the night, you're going to be like, man, my bass sounds terrible. Because you kept adjusting the tone and you kept adjusting everything, and so it didn't give you what you wanted. So you have to make sure that you find a happy place. All right, spent too much time on that question, but hopefully you got it. All right, somebody clearly wants me to come to Cameroon for a bass session. I will come to Cameroon. Lionel, you set it up. You get the tickets. I'm on my way. All right, Somebody said, gotta go. Thomas Bay said, you gotta go. Mike says, how do you know when you're locked in on the right groove? Is it a feeling or is it more technical than that? It's a feeling. It's pretty much a feeling. That's about as technical as it gets. You can make it technical, but at the end of the day, when it comes to groove, it gotta feel a certain way. And if it don't feel right, you probably not locked in. That the groove comes down to how it feels. It's all about that feel when it comes to groove. All right. So thank you, Thomas. I know you're gone now, but thank you. Christoph said, "Did you receive?" There it is. Sorry, I got a call, guys. Got a call that interrupted the live. All right. So yeah, I think I've adjusted it a few times, Christoph. I've adjusted my settings a few times. But yeah, it is tricky. It's just trial and error. And I see you, Jerry, if you're still here. Um, are intervals. Uh, just like I'm trying to think of a technical or simplified way to explain it. Like intervals are like notes. Christoph, you give me the technical term and I'll break it down. Christoph is my theory guy. So like if I'm playing the 1 to the 3, the interval is 1 2 3 1 3. Those are pretty much intervals, just in terms from a sound perspective. Um, and you can do that with like the 1 5. You know what I'm saying? All over the instrument, just being like perfect fifth. Uh, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 5, 1 6, 1 7. Those different things like 1 6. You know what I'm saying? So those are different type intervals. So all right, let's see here. I'm trying to get to the end of this because I'm over and I'm seeing a lot of Lionel. Mike, my pleasure, man. Way so to speak. DeAndre, thank you, man. Salve live. I'm not sure what that means. How do I send your tickets? How do you send my tickets? Let's talk about it. If you're serious, send me an email. Let's talk about it. Send me an email at Jermaine@jermainemorgan.net. And let's talk about details before you send tickets. If you're serious about me coming, I would love to come, but let's talk about and work out details because there's a lot going. You're in a whole nother country, so let's make sure we got everything everything together and handle the business part of it. All right. So Mercy says, and how do you use an interval to create feels? That's almost a whole nother conversation for a lesson. Requesting bass session in Manatee, Mississippi. Really enjoy it. All right, I got you. I can come to Manatee. I know where that's at. I can drive there. So, how do you use intervals to create feels? I mean, like I said, that's something really for a whole nother lesson because just to try to get into that, the biggest thing is trying to understand intervals first. And as you begin to understand them, and get comfortable with moving around the neck of your instrument or the neck of the bass. You know, just like if I took that, you know, right there could have been a lick. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing is there. There you go. An example of using an interval to create a lick. Or I can start on the 2. And so, and Mercy, I want to say this again, and I'm not a technical guy, and I'm not trying to convince everybody to be like me. You know what I'm saying? But what makes it so easy for me to do certain things that you hear me do is the fact that I don't try to be so technical with it. I'm trying to make myself aware of what it is I'm doing, so I'm not completely lost as to what it is I'm playing. But at the same time, I think we worry too much about the mechanics of how to do stuff instead of just doing it. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to know completely how you're going to end or how I'm going to do all that. It's like it's trial and error. The best things are learned by trying it. The best things are figured out by actually trying it, because you can have all this information and have all the details about, okay, I'm supposed to do this, and if I'm going to build, this, I'm supposed to jump from from the 1 to the 6. You know what I'm saying? But if you're doing all that and you're just worrying about the mechanics of it, you're probably not going to put as much time into actually trying to execute. Going back to the top of this lesson when I was talking, one of the things that separate pros from most people is their execution and their application of what they're doing. They're putting in the work, and they're applying the stuff that they know. Somebody asked a question earlier in this broadcast. Somebody asked a question about how do I get better at my go-to stuff. It's that application over and over again. Before we keep trying to add more stuff and keep trying to figure out how to do the complicated stuff, how are you doing on the stuff that's your go-to things? Before we keep trying to add, stuff to what it is we're doing, how are you doing with the things that you're already playing, the things that you already have in your arsenal? You have a tool box full of tools. We don't just keep piling more tools in there and we still can't work on a car. Let's figure out how to do something with the tools that we have. It's kind of like I know a lot of producers and I know a lot of musicians who have a lot of instruments. Like we were talking about basses earlier, and what would be the best bass, and the bass you use is the best bass. If you can get the job done with the bass you use, that's the best bass to get. That's the best bass to have. The one you have is the best one to have for now. And once you get the job done so great on this one, then now people are paying you that you can buy another bass. Well, now buy you another bass. But if you can't execute properly with the things you have, stop buying more stuff. I know producers, like I said, that have all the latest stuff in their studio, and they don't know how to turn it on. They don't know how to record Mary Had a Little Lamb with their bass. They're not sure how to, stop latency and stuff like that from happening. But you have the latest, whatever the newest Focusrite. I got the newest Studio One. I have the newest this. I have the newest Pro Tools. I have HD. I have all this stuff. I have all these plugins, but you haven't produced one album. And you've had all of the latest stuff updating every year for the last 10 years, and you've never put out an album. If that's your hobby, it's cool. But if it's something that you're trying to do and become good at, take what you have first and use what you have. Maximize the potential of what you have already. Not saying don't keep learning, don't keep feeding yourself, but make sure as you're feeding that you're not just getting fat. A lot of us, as it comes to playing, and we're watching all these videos, we're listening to everybody. A lot of people jump in my comment section on these different videos requesting for me to produce more content, which I have no problem with. I like, producing this content, and I like being able to help people. But my issue with a lot of people is this: don't keep requesting for more when you're not doing with the little bit that you have. Do something with what you have. Do something. Are you like a lot of you that are taking in this information that you're watching me, you're watching Scott Bass Lesson, you're watching Derek Bennett, you're watching, Davey 504, whoever you're watching, you're taking all of this stuff. Who are you helping? Are you giving anything out to the little young player down the street that's trying to figure it out? Are you just You just hogging all the information for yourself. Oh, I got a little bit more. Got a little bit more from him. I learned that from Derek last week. I learned this from Jermaine this week. I learned this from Scott this week. It's like you're pulling from all these different places, but what are you doing with the information that you have? How are you maximizing it? Is it all from a selfish standpoint, just so you can get as much as you possibly can for free from everybody that will give it to you for free, but you won't share any of it? Or are you actually taking this and doing something with it and moving people forward with the information that you have? Are you moving your band forward with the information that you have? Are you moving your church forward? And I don't mean coming into a place just to be a know-it-all. So you can say, I know all of this. I know all of, I know all my theory. I got all of this, and I learned from this person. I learned, and this person talks to me. What are you doing with what you have? And I didn't mean to go here, but it is what it is. You have to make sure the little bit that we have, you're making the most of the little that you have. Because if you're just taking in all this information and you're not doing anything with it other than just taking, then you, by definition, are a taker. You're not giving anything. You are just a taker. And some people like to call that just a leech. If you're constantly just be honest with yourself and evaluate what you're doing with the information that you're getting. What are you doing with the information? Are you a leech that you're just taking stuff from people? Are you a leech? Or are you a vessel? You're taking it in and you're pouring it out. You're taking it in, pouring it out to somebody else. You're taking it in, you're pouring it out in this scenario, pouring it out in that scenario. You have more room to give. You have more room to receive, sorry. When you give a little bit of what you have more room to give. The more you pour out to people. The reason why I'm able to give the little bit of information, a little bit of knowledge, I don't profess to be the greatest bass player in the world. I don't profess to have all the answers. I don't profess to have, all of the ideas. That's why it's a plethora of musicians on YouTube now, and all of us have different information. But the way that information is able to come from week to week, and I'm able to put out videos every other day, is because I'm constantly giving. I'm constantly giving information. So I'm constantly emptying out my container. You know what I'm saying? I'm constantly emptying it out. So more stuff can be poured into it for me to give out. But if you're just selfish and you're just hogging and you're just taking, you're just leeching, then once yours get filled to the rim, what you're going to do? Put a lid on it and stash it away? Once your vessel is full, that means you're ready to pour, give. And a lot of you guys, let me give y'all the secret to a lot of the stuff that I've learned about my bass playing that I haven't shared. One of the reasons my playing grew the way it did is because I started sharing so much information. Because one of the things you'll find when you share information, it makes you have to know what you're talking about. And if you don't know, you'll find, hey, I need to go back and look at this. I need to go back and research this. I need to go back and get a little better on this subject because I was trying to do this or I was trying to explain that and I wasn't completely sure. So it causes you to constantly be in a mode of evaluating yourself. So the more you share, by default, the better you get. The better you get, the more you share it. Since I've been doing these lessons, I think I've learned more than the people who are taking the lessons. My playing has increased and improved dramatically over the last 6 or so years, however long I've been doing YouTube. And granted, even before then, I was sharing by doing lessons. I've been giving lessons pretty much for the last at least 15 years, off and on. I've been giving lessons to people. One-on-one lessons, and I started doing lessons when I lived in Mississippi and I was like 18, 19 years old. So I've been giving for a long time and sharing these different concepts with people. It's just, it has grown over the years. And if you want to really grow in your playing, start giving out the information. Stop hogging all the information and start giving it out. If you really want to see a difference in your playing, start giving it out. Start explaining to people how you do what you do. And you will get a better understanding of exactly how you do what you do. When you can explain it to somebody, you know it. When you can really break it down to somebody, what it is you're doing, you know what you're doing.
But when you just, oh man, I don't even know what I did, man. I was just playing around. If that's your answer every time you get asked a question, that means more than likely you have false humility because you're acting like you don't know. Secondly, you don't really want to share because you're not spending enough time to learn what it is you're doing so you can have the opportunity to share it with somebody. And three, you're probably not growing. And if you're not going forward, you're going backwards. Or you're staying in that same stagnant place. And after you stay stagnant for so long when it comes to your playing, if you're not going up, you're going down. Because everything is constantly evolving. You ain't sharing with anybody, you can best believe that you're going down. Because you're hitting the glass ceiling. Now that is not to say that if you've been playing for years, you're doing this. It's not to say that you're not good, but you're not as good as you could be. I can guarantee you that you're not as good as you could be. When you start to share, it begins to open up other things. It begins to open up other ideas. It begins to strike up a hunger for you to search for more. Because the more you give out, you have to put something back. You have to put something back there. So you got to figure out, okay, where can I add? Where can I add? But the more you've been talking, the more you've been sharing, the more you've been giving, the more things make sense to you. So now when you hear certain things, oh, I know what that is. Because now I know what it is I'm doing. And so I can explain this to somebody. And it's just one of those things. It recycles itself. The more you give out, you just keep getting. The more you give, the more you keep getting. You just keep recycling it, and you never run out of information. You never run out of ideas. You never run out of licks. So I could put out another 20 courses, and that will still be information. As long as I continue to stay in a posture where I'm giving, I will never run out of ideas. So half of the answers to most of these questions is a lack of giving. I hate to be blunt, but it's a lack of giving. So yeah. All right. So let me go. I might not need to read no more the comments now. Uh, let's see here. Can you tell me? All right. Let me make sure I'm appreciate you. You can tell you love what you do. I appreciate all the knowledge you share, bro. My pleasure, DJ. When you go, see, bro, in the slide. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. When I come down there, I need to come to Huntsville. Actually, I'm trying to come, DJ. I'm trying to come to the area, man. I want to come. I went to school in Florence, Alabama, University of North Alabama, and I want to come to that area, to the Shoals area, to do a clinic. So maybe you can catch me. Hopefully, I can get up there this year. Early part of this year, I want to come to do a clinic in the Shoals area. So Huntsville, I know, is like literally right down the street from the Shoals area. So when I come, be sure to show up when I come to the Shoals area. So yeah, I'm trying to get over there. All right. So let me see here. Morning, Jermaine. Blessing, Sean. What's up, man? I don't know why when I play, I tend to dig in way too much compared when I rehearse in the practice room. What is the cure for that? It's just excitement. That's pretty much all it is. Just being aware. It goes back to being aware. Um, Ernest from Connecticut. What is the best recording device for bass? Would you recommend? Looping device. TC makes a really simple to use looper. That comes down to preference, but I have a Digitech Jam Man that I've been using for years. I like it for a number of reasons, but when I got it, there a lot of people didn't have these options that I was looking for. But now most of the companies are making it like where you can get a microphone in there. You can get, depending on which one you buy, you can get stereo out, stereo in. There's a lot of options that when I bought this one, a lot of companies didn't have that for affordable option. So I've had mine, man, probably 9 years or more. So I would say, man, I probably had that 10 years now, and you can hear it making some noise. So it's almost time for me to get another one. So TC Electronic make a good one. I mean, Boss has been doing it for years. I got hip to Victor Wooten using a Boss pedal. I never bought a Boss pedal. I started with this Digitech Jam Man. And because the longevity of this one, I might go back with Digitech. I have had a one of the Ditto loopers. It's cool, but it's something I've gotten comfortable. I'm like an old school dude. Once I get comfortable and I like something, I tend to stick with it. So it'll be between the TC Electronic for me and the Digitech in terms of the actual. And I don't endorse Digi. I do endorse TC, but I don't endorse Digitech. But I had the Jam Man before I started endorsing the TC stuff. So yeah, it'll either be between the TC or the Digitech for me for a looper. And recording, I use Logic. I have an Apple computer and I use Logic for recording. All right, so honestly, I don't know if I'm qualified to teach someone because I'm still learning. You qualified to teach. That's first and foremost, you're definitely qualified to teach. Someone asked me about giving lessons. Perhaps I should pursue that. Yeah, you should. Who was that? Purple Plus? I don't know what your real name is, but yeah, you should definitely pursue giving lessons. You don't have to be the greatest in the world. Some of the greatest teachers are not the greatest players. Hopefully y'all know that. Like, some of the greatest teachers are not the greatest players in the world. A teacher is anybody who's willing to give you information that they know that helps to move you forward. That's it. That's the only requirement. If you know a little bit more than this person knows over here, then you can teach them. If you know a little bit more. Because if I got 1% of knowledge and you got 3%, well, that extra 2% is going to help me. If I got 1%, you got 2%, that extra 1% will help me. So you don't have to be that much farther in front of somebody to show them what you know. So don't wait till you get way up here, because if you can't do it on the smallest level, you won't do it when you're higher up, because you'll find every excuse. Well, I don't have the time now. Oh, well, I still got a couple of things I need to work out. Well, you'll always make excuses. So if you can start on a small level, feeling like you're not good enough, to start disciplining yourself to show somebody the little bit that you know, well, you'll notice the little bit you know, well, now your 2% will go to 10%. And the more you teach, that 10% will go to 20 and 30 and 40. And before you know it, you have a whole bunch of information to share, because it's going to push you to learn more. And really, teaching makes you learn and study. Teaching makes you grow. It makes you, I can say that with 100% confidence, that teaching makes you grow. All right. So let me see. And I hope to finish all these comments. All right. JD says, amen. The more you share, the more you expose. Yes, sir. Nice advice giving is the best. Absolutely. So nice. I want to play like that. How? Man, just keep going. Keep going. Keep putting in the work. Francis Givers never lack the concept of sharing. Absolutely. Well received information. God bless you. Thank you, Sean. When are you coming to South Africa? I don't know. I had a lot of requests for South Africa, and I definitely want to come. I don't know when I'm coming, though, because I have been playing a while. I can tell when a teacher is sharing and when they are holding back. You not only share, but you share from the heart. Thanks so much, man. K. Oliver, my pleasure, man. What kind of exercises do you recommend for strengthening your dexterity? Stretching exercises, like really stretching your fingers. If you follow Bubby Lewis, he talks about that a lot in terms of stretching your fingers. Like, stretching is very important in terms of, along with all the technical stuff like playing chromatic scales. You can do little chromatic exercises and that kind of thing. Like one exercise that I learned from a friend of mine years ago for building dexterity and getting all of your fingers moving. I'll show you this real quick because I got to go. But one of the exercises I learned is like you play 1, 4, 2. Then the next one is 1. You drop a string. 1, 4, 3. Then you go up a string and do the same thing. So you do it up and down the fretboard. It just gets your fingers moving, get your brain to thinking with your hands, because a lot of times we can think stuff that we can't play, or vice versa. We can play stuff that we don't think, but this makes it all start working. And what is the hand and eye coordination? You start, okay, I know I got to switch fingers each time. So it breaks up the monotony of doing, you know what I'm saying? It breaks up that monotony, because now you're going, I hadn't done it in a while, so I'm having to think. And so on. And you want to work on getting it clean. I'm just speeding through it for the sake of talking. I haven't done that one in a while, but that's a good one to do. And another one is that's another one to do. I haven't done all these in a while, but those are other ones that I would do a lot, and it worked on independence with your fingers and being able to build that dexterity. And like I said, the other thing is stretching. Sometimes I'll do stuff like stretch my fingers. I got big hands, long fingers, but I stretch my hands as much as I think about it. I try to stretch my hands, making sure you shake your hands out before you play, stretching your wrist. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that stuff don't get tight. The older you get, the more your muscles have a tendency to tighten up. And if you do a lot of work with your hands, you definitely got to stretch, because this basically keep your hand in a certain position a lot of the times. And when you do other work, shifting out of that position can sometimes cause pain. You don't want to run into carpal tunnel or anything like that. So yeah, you got to just do little stuff like that will help. All right. So will you do a bass lick video again, please? I don't know. I might. I've done so many lick videos. It's a whole series. I have lick of the week. There's a whole series on my website. Not website, but on my YouTube channel. When you leave here, go and check out Jermaine Morgan TV Season 4 and go to the top videos. There's lick of the week. Matter of fact, I did lick of the week last season, Season 3, but the beginning of this season, there was a lick every day for like a month. I was putting out lick every single day, a 1 minute lick 1 minute lick series. I would put out a lick and then I would break it down the next day, put out another lick, break it down, put out another lick. So there are licks for days. And if you looking for more, I have 50, I want to say almost 50 plus licks on between my 2 riffs and licks courses. So that's more than enough licks. So if you're looking for that, it's on JermaineMorgan.net. Go to the courses tab. You'll see riffs and licks, and I have 2 courses. There is tab, there is the score, if you need that as well. And on riffs and licks volume 2, there's also a MIDI file, so you can put the MIDI file into whatever DAW you use, and you can get the notes to play out for you, as well as slowing the videos down. All of that stuff is available right there on my website for sale. That one's not free. The 6 grooving licks is free, and the seven more funky licks, that's here on YouTube. But the 2 courses where I break down the licks, that's on my website. So it's a lot of licks. So if you ain't found enough licks and all of that, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if I'm not saying I won't do another licks course, but there's a lot of free content that I have that I'm breaking down licks. There's a lot of bass licks. So remember that. Don't overcrowd your toolbox. So let's see here. Let me find where I was at. All right. I can't pronounce your name. Marcel. I'll say Marcel. What's up? Can you make tutorials on slow worship songs where it starts slow and ends up super strong? I'm working through that. I'm working through this whole gospel and worship series right now. So I'll see about that. I got a video that's coming up with like a mid-tempo worship song. And we'll see where it goes. I can't make any promises today. I'm not going to commit to that. But I will see where it goes, like as I'm working through this gospel series of lessons. So be sure to stay tuned on my site and keep up with the backing tracks, because if you see one that has that feel in the backing track, there's a high probability that I'll do a lesson that week on that. If you see that backing track that has that kind of feel that you're talking about. So yep. So Vaughn says, what's the difference? What's the major difference between a regular bass and a bass that's expensive as a Warrior bass? Um, that's a lot of differences in terms of it really depends on your ears and the exotic woods. Most of those basses are handcrafted, which means people took a little bit more time in the fine detail of those basses. They have a slightly different tone, the tonality of the wood. The woods that are used are different. They're aged instead of being cut on a regular machine. And don't get me wrong, I always tell you guys, I'm not a technical guy, but it's like there's certain differences that I found that I took a liking to more boutique basses than custom basses, because for me, they feel different. They feel very different in terms of playing a custom bass like a Warrior, or even this Serene that I'm playing. I can play the Serene and it's a completely different feeling for me picking up a Fender bass. I'm sorry. A lot of times the spacing is different, and you can get more custom options, as far as the spacing and as far as the type of woods. Whereas if you buy something that comes straight out of a store, you're going to pretty much get what they send you. You don't really have the options to pick what you want and specify. The custom boutique thing is like, okay, it's almost like specking out a car like you want it. And people spec out basses that they get from, like a Squire. People can go back and change the pickups. But like when you get a boutique bass, it's slightly different. You get a few more options, and there's certain different tonalities that come. Each builder got his own little special thing that he's learned, or that company has learned, that makes those basses different. The best thing I could tell you, you have to go to get the difference, to get a sense of the difference. If you're close to somebody who builds boutique basses, or you're close to a shop, if you're close to like a Warrior, or you're close to one of these other companies, just go to their shop. Because I didn't really, to be honest, I had an idea. The biggest thing that drew me in obviously was the look, because exotic basses look amazing. That's pretty much the first thing that draw you in, is the look. It's almost kind of like when you're looking at exotic cars, it's like, man, why are they paying $300,000 for a car? Until you get close to that car and you get in that car and you see, oh, okay, this ride's a little different from the Toyota. Yeah, both of them get you from point A to B. They'll both do the same thing, but it's very, very big differences in these different cars. And the same thing with basses. When you go to a custom shop and you're able to play those basses at these places that they build these custom basses, as opposed to going into a Guitar Center or a Sam Ash or something like that, it's a completely different experience when you're able to put your hands on something that's more boutique. Some people like it, some people don't. It's not for everybody. But for me, I kind of fell in love more so with the boutique basses, because it resonated with me personally, with how I play, with what I want to get out of my playing. The more boutique basses resonated with me, because I grew up playing the less expensive basses, and I didn't get the same feel from the basses that are a little less expensive. Not taking anything away from less expensive basses, but for me personally, I don't get the same thing if I pick up, I can still play and do whatever I do, but it's certain, with my ears, there's certain tone qualities, there's certain things that I'm looking for that I don't get out of every single bass. Now, I said I didn't want to be on here for 2 hours, and I'm coming up on the 2 hour mark. All right, I gotta jump. I'm gonna read a few more questions. I gotta go. I know the question keeps coming in as long as I stay here. I can't. All right, so if you get a chance, can you post the numbers for the dexterity exercises? I'm sure that'll help me out a lot. I'll see if I can work on that. Purple, no problem. Oh snap! I didn't even realize that. My bad. I'm going to watch them now. Thank you. No problem. I have a problem. And my problem is that I learned a lot of scales and arpeggio techniques, but I don't know how to use them. Just keep working them into your practicing. Try to implement them in the songs and the type of stuff you do. Work with it and work through it, and it'll make sense to you the more you do it. Intervals and the distance between the difference between. Yeah, thank you for that, Mattias Wilburn. That's pretty much what I was saying without saying it. Intervals are the distance between the two different notes. Thank you for that technical explanation of that. So if anybody needed that, there you go. Intervals are the distance between, and that's what we were talking about earlier with the 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 6. I couldn't think of the words to explain what I was talking about, but thank you. What is the most EQ do you use on your bass and amp? My amp is pretty much flat most of the time. If there's any EQing, and that's a tip I learned from a bass mentor of mine who was just telling me about how to kind of set my amp up, and this is preference again. But my amp stays pretty flat. Depending on the bass that I'm playing, if the bass needs some help, then I'll use the amp to help the bass out. But for the most part, I keep my bass settings pretty flat, and I'm not bass. I keep my amp setting pretty flat, and I EQ from my bass. So my sound is coming out of my amp is pretty true to what the bass is. I don't color up the bass too much with the amp. There are times I'll use a compression a little bit on the amp, depending on what it is I'm going for. But 90% of the time for me, my amp is set flat. Unless the amp or the speakers just sound terrible and I got to do all the extra stuff to get the best out of the speakers. But if it's a nice, decent setup, I pretty much try to set it flat. So if I come and play a gig or something, if you have a pretty decent set EQ, I'm probably not going to touch your EQ. I'll work with my bass and make minor adjustments on the EQ, or I'll just set it all flat for the sake of getting what I want. All right, so Cephas, I have the same problem. I learned skills but can't really apply them. Okay, thank you. All right, guys, I gotta jump off here. I've been on here way too long, but I've really enjoyed this talk. I really enjoyed this time with y'all and sharing. I hope that y'all have found something helpful from today, and I hope that y'all will take some of this stuff with you and share it with somebody else. Share this video with somebody else if you found something helpful in this video. And yeah, I'll be back on next week. There's more content coming out all throughout this week. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and subscribe, turn on the bell notifications. I don't have a Patreon page, but I do have stuff available, merchandise available right up under this video. So that would really help me. That will really help me to continue to create content if you guys support the merchandise that I have available under this video. And also on JermaineMorgan.net, I have tons of courses. I have tons of merchandise on my website, as well as albums and all this stuff. All of this stuff, when you support, and I appreciate the people who are on here watching because I recognize some of the names, like Nathaniel Smalls, if you're still here, big supporter of JermaineMorgan.net, man. Thank you so much. There's so many people. Kay Oliver, I've seen you. I don't want to start naming people because I know I'll forget somebody and I don't want to make anybody mad. But I saw y'all's names, so that's why I mentioned y'all. Y'all are big supporters of my website, and I really appreciate you. You help me to continue to create content, because this stuff, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and I have to be available to do it. And the only way I can be available is by people like you guys that support me to be able to do this. So if you want me to continue to make content, don't just be a leech. Support what it is. If I've added value to you in any way, help me to continue to add value to you and others by supporting this channel, by supporting what it is. If you don't want to buy the hoodies, the t-shirts and all that kind of stuff, I guarantee it's something on the website that you can use. So if it ain't nothing but a backing track, go to the website now and support. Go to the shop page. You'll see all the different stuff that I have available there. And go ahead and get all that stuff. Rack up on as much of it as you can. It will help me. It will definitely help my family out, because we don't live off these lessons alone. We have to go ahead and pay for stuff. I have to keep the lights on. So all of your support definitely helps me to continue to create. So thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me today. I gotta go. I'm way past the time I'm supposed to be off of here, but I'm enjoyed it again. And thank y'all. I'll see you on the next post. Watch out for the videos coming out this week. And be encouraged, stay inspired, and I'm out. Peace.